See this guy? A former CIA agent has appeared at the United Nations calling for justice over the West's bombing of Russian pipelines 19 months ago. Now he's echoing a call from a Chinese diplomat who called for justice to be done over this issue. Now what the ex-CIA man said revealed a lot, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first, let's be clear. There's no argument over the two key facts in the case. First, that a bombing of major infrastructure at this scale is a huge war crime under international law. I mean, that's clear. Second, it's accepted that Western nations committed this crime. Now, there was an initial attempt by the US to blame the attack on the Russian pipelines on Russia itself.
Most likely
Russian sabotage on its own infrastructure.
It's a common sense matter.
I think it's Putin's way of sending a message.
What Putin is saying to us by blowing up his pipeline is, look, I can blow up a pipeline.
Everyone knows that Putin did this himself.
The attempt to blame Russia for the attack on the Russian pipelines was widely mocked as ridiculous, which it was. So that theory was abandoned. It had to be, after the emergence of multiple clips in which Americans, including Biden himself, revealed that they had a plan to end the pipelines.
There will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
From then on, there was general agreement that the Western powers did it. Most independent analysts, East and West, say that the US did it with the help of Europeans, while the US said Europeans did it, specifically pointing at Ukrainians. Either way, there's no dispute. It was the Western powers. Now here's the issue. When a crime has been committed, justice demands that it is independently investigated on behalf of the victim. But what happened? The Western powers said they would investigate and Russia would be excluded. In other words, the suspects would investigate their own crime and the victim would be locked out. Now, China rightly said that this was unjust and a genuine independent investigation should be done. Now, here's Larry Johnson. Listen to what he has to say.
I will not review the mountain of evidence that implicates my own country, the United States, in this act of war against the Russian Federation and the Federal Republic of Germany. There was no compelling national security interest to justify the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline, which has inflicted significant economic pain on the people of Germany. This attack accomplished nothing in terms of helping bring an end to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine's NATO facilitators. It made matters worse. During my time at the CIA, I acquired an understanding of how covert action was planned and executed in places as diverse as Afghanistan and Central America. Such operations are not conducted spur of the moment. They are funded, planned, rehearsed before being executed. Seymour Hersh's account of the U.S. covert action against the Nord Stream pipeline is consistent with the knowledge I acquired during my time at the agency in the late 1980s. It has been 19 months since the pipeline was destroyed, and the NATO countries appear to have adopted the posture of the three wise monkeys. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. I have some insight into the logistics and execution of the attack on Nord Stream, thanks to work I did on behalf of the U.S. Military Special Operations Forces. That work commenced in the spring of 1994 and ended in 2016. During those 22 years, I was part of a team that scripted multiple counterterrorism exercises. We would create scenarios such as a group threatening to use a biological weapon in a North African country, and then replicate the diplomatic and intelligence traffic, reporting the threat to stimulate a response by the particular military diplomatic task force tasked both to analyze, contain, and defeat the threat. In the course of this work, we also had to think like saboteurs or terrorists, understand their motives, understand the capabilities required to carry out such an attack, and identify the kinds of resources and training that would underpin such a terrorist operation. That even in complex international investigations, without access to classified material, we were able to gather massive quantities of evidence which would have been admissible and stood up in a U.S. criminal court. In doing these investigations, I learned that Disneyland has it right. It is a small world, after all. The nexus between criminal organizations, major international corporations, financial institutions, and intelligence organizations is not a fantasy. It is real and involves hundreds of billions of dollars. My experience convinces me that a properly funded investigation carried out by professionals will uncover documents, informants, eyewitnesses that can prove beyond a reasonable doubt who carried out the Nord Stream pipeline bombing. The nations assembled here have one advantage in an investigation that we as private investigators did not have. You have signals intelligence, satellites. You have data stored, for example, that can provide intelligence ranging from the movements of ships to the movement of money. When you combine that data with conventional evidence, you have a powerful means for identifying who ordered and executed the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline. I can say this much with certainty about that operation. It was carried out with the financial and material support of at least one nation state. There are written records, almost certainly highly classified and stored with very limited access. But there may be available evidence outside such classified records that can illuminate the act significantly, if not solve the mystery. My message to you today is simple. Follow the money. Also ask cui bono, who benefits. I believe the refusal to conduct a thorough investigation of this matter casts a cloud over the Security Council.
To sum it all up, Larry Johnson spent 22 years in military intelligence, and he gives his vote to the account of the operation as described by Seymour Hersh. In other words, the US did it with European help. You know, probably the biggest pieces of evidence that he's correct are three things. First, when Seymour Hersh published his account, it was easily the most discussed topic on all major social media. Yet there was a total news blackout on that story on 16 of the world's biggest Western mainstream news outlets. Who's powerful enough to censor virtually all major US media in one go? Second, the bombing was incredibly harmful to Germany. Yet no one in the European Council, except of course the Irish, will speak out. Who's got so much power over Europe? Third, the situation is clearly morally wrong, but no international organisation has dared to call for fair play for Russia and Germany. Who scared those organisations? Well, you can choose your own answer. Peace.